Welcome to Global Forum, a platform for discussion of global issues from global perspectives. We have a special program focused on Pakistan and its continued constitutional crises. We are going to discuss the crises, its genesis, and its possible consequences, and what will mean for the possibility of democracy taking root in Pakistan. We are very fortunate to have in our studios Mr. Justice Wajihuddin Ahmed Sahab, who has gone through the whole process of being at the High Court, the Supreme Court, and the Attorney General of Pakistan, and he's a professor of law. But most importantly, he has been seen as one of the patron saints of the lawyers' movement in Pakistan. Welcome, Justice Sahab. Justice Sahab, please tell us, what do you think is the status of the movement in Pakistan right now? Where is the struggle for justice, not just for the judges, but where is the struggle for justice in Pakistan at this stage? If you had to give us a status report, what would be the status report, sir?
The movement in Pakistan is as strong as it ever was. There has been a slight reverse, if you may call it that, when the huge gathering that we were able to get together in Islamabad was dispersed at the brink of the National Assembly session itself, which was only a few hours away. The lawyers and members of the civil society were extremely well placed at that time. The assembly session was about to reconvene. That was the time when we should have stood our ground and negotiated a workable arrangement with regard to the restoration of the superior judiciary in Pakistan. But that, of course, apart, the movement is again trying to take off. We have had this recent press conference of the General Secretary of the Supreme Court Bar Association, where he has said that there is going to be a meeting on the 19th of this month, where they would again delve into the question of taking out another long march, and this time they are very clear that it is going to combine with a dharna or a sit-in. So surely matters are progressing satisfactorily. These things do take time. If you take law into your own hands, if you don't take a more placid and a more complacent attitude, perhaps results can be achieved more quickly. But then many a times disasters cannot be avoided if that kind of option is taken. So I think all in all, everything is fine and moving in the right direction.
Yes. Justice Sahab, I think the different kinds of inquiry one could or one does make about the Long March partly depends on how one reads a historical movement, a social movement, what's the methodology. And only those people who expect immediate results from movements, who have no understanding of the history of movements, will have that kind of expectation. It seems to me a major achievement for this movement was A, to bring about nationwide mobilization, and B, to keep it completely peaceful. Those are two major achievements given the situation right now. Let me ask you, a movement has to have some goals, a core group to pursue those goals, and a modality that people can buy into that modality. It seems right now the biggest stumbling block to that is Pakistan People's Party. Not that People's Party is necessarily an enemy force, but its stance has created difficulties which must be discussed and overcome. And the biggest difficulty, I think, have been presented by way of the constitutional package itself. For two reasons. One, it obviously says that they are not going to use the executive order, which was the preferred and easier method. And secondly, itself is so complex and so contradictory that it creates as many problems it seeks to solve. What's your judgment, what's your analysis of the constitutional package?
If you allow me to speak frankly,
please.
I would say that I have never seen a worse constitutional document. I have never seen a worse bundle of contradictions than the so-called constitutional package. In fact, if you start analyzing motives, you will find motives here, motives there, and motives everywhere.
Isn't it also perpetuate a tradition started by Ziaul Haq, continued by Musharraf, and now being institutionalized, at least attempted to be institutionalized by Mr. Zardari, that is creating individual-specific legislation? Because exactly. The rule of law is supposed to be impersonal, isn't it, above individuals?
Exactly so. In fact, it is person-specific in the context of Pervez Musharraf himself. It is person-specific in the context of Mr. Zardari. It is person-specific with regard to Abdul Hamid Dogar. They want to increase the age of the Supreme Court judges just because they want to have him for a longer duration in the Supreme Court. And the tenure and duration of others, again, in the same context, is sought to be curtailed, because to Iftikhar Chaudhry, they are prepared to accord only 5 years as Chief Justice, and thereafter an obvious opportunity is calculated to be provided to Abdul Hamid Dogar. Then we have Javed Iqbal, who is the next senior most judge in the Supreme Court after Justice Iftikhar Chaudhry. They are trying to penalize him for a crime, for a crime, if it is a crime at all, of accommodating the Pervez Musharraf regime. He accepted to become the chairman of the press council to accommodate the point of view of Pervez Musharraf, that Pervez Musharraf had effectively retired the Supreme Court judges, but they don't want to have him, because if he is there, Dogar will have no chance to become Chief Justice. And then, of course, Rana Bhagwan Das, the age of all and sundry is going to be raised to 68, but Rana Bhagwan Das would stand retired at the age of 65. So I think really it's a shameful document.
Now here what we also see in this document is ex post facto legislation, indicating every law passed between 12th of July and 15th of December is indemnified. It deemed to be made by a competent authority and cannot be called into question any court on any ground whatsoever, which is as comprehensive an indemnity that could be granted, and is person specific. Given the fact, Justice Saab, that Pakistani civil society right now is not able to change the position. Now it seems like there are two main options. Either People's Party will continue with the status quo by way of deadlock over the constitutional package, or the worst option will be they'll be able to implement the constitutional package. Regardless of either consequence, either option, do you think there will be some negative consequences for People's Party out of this process?
I think negative consequences have already started. Prior to the general elections on February 18, 2008, Pervez Musharraf was the most unpopular person in Pakistan. Now, slowly and gradually, Mr. Asif Ali Zardari is creeping in to take that position. The consequences to People's Party and to its leadership are obvious. Furthermore, there appears to be developing a cleavage between the members of the People's Party itself, because some of them, comparatively newer faces, have been accorded positions of responsibility, where others who have served lifetimes in the service of the People's Party have been grounded. So I think the consequences of whatever is transpiring there are clearly visible as something plainly negative to the Pakistan People's Party.
This is normally I have observed that most rulers go through 4 phases: honeymoon phase, alienation phase, resistance phase, and removal phase. Will you say that in case of Mr. Zardari, the process of alienation is rather expedited, unusually expedited? The people, even in own party, are beginning to question him, and they may not challenge him, but they are feeling alienated from him.
Actually, my own view is that Mr. Asif Ali Zardari began quite well. He
and that was honeymoon period.
Yes, absolutely. He did very well, and his popularity graph moved up quite quickly. But then it seems that the same graph is going down as quickly.
Now let's talk about the larger context. It seems to me in Pakistan in last 2 years, particularly last 6 months, trifurcation of power has taken place. We have the military establishment, we have the parliament and the parliamentary parties, and we have non-parliamentary parties combined with other institutions of civil society led by lawyers and supported by the media. What kind of interplay do you visualize between these 3 forces over the next few months?
Out of these, insofar as the military and civil society players are concerned, they obviously have an informal existence. But insofar as the parliament, the executive and the judiciary are concerned, they are the formal organs of the state. That is where the power should vest. Of these, I think, while the military wields physical power, the people of Pakistan are getting stronger in the sense that street power is evolving very fast, in the sense that if there is deprivation, expression of that deprivation is very quick and very noticeable. And insofar as their support of the judicial cause goes, maybe they are the real force through which the judges would be restored, and pursuant to the efforts of which you will have an independent judiciary in Pakistan.
Very excellent, but just to see how this thing is going to work out, Justice Saab, normally when we talk of the street power, we equate with some kind of agitation, maybe violence, maybe unregulated behavior. And that abstracts from the equation the intellectual role, the role of the intelligentsia. Where do you see Pakistani intelligentsia in this equation? And what kind of role are they playing in changing people's mind, their opinion, and shaping their preferences?
The most extraordinary thing about the lawyers' movement, coupled with the civil society movement, is that it is not so much a movement of the workers or of the peasants or of the man on the street. It is definitely a movement of the intellectuals, a movement of those who apparently know what they are doing, and who obviously also know what they propose ultimately to achieve. So I think that way it is an extraordinary movement, and its combined with lawyers has made it something most wonderful. In fact, I came across an assessment a few days back where internationally at some function in New York, a lawyer's function, a judge's function, it was said that the year 2007 belongs to Pakistan.
Mm-hmm. And rightly so. As I'm sure I shared with you earlier, Ramsey Clark, the 66th Attorney General of the United States, recently in a phone conversation with Chief Justice of Pakistan commented, he said, what you have done has never been done in any society before. The whole world is indebted to you. But I still want to go back to the issue of the movement. It seems to me, sir, that even in Pakistan, sometimes people are selling this movement short, in the sense the belief is That the real thing is the parliament, and movement happens to be sort of third best option that one could take. But when we look at the history of the world, it is the social movements, even in the presence of the very established institutions, that have brought changes. Had there been no Malcolm X, had there been no Martin Luther King, America will still be a very racist society. They had all the institutions, but the racism was overcome by the street of the United States, not by the state of the United States. And I may want to bring to your attention a story and then ask your comment. Dr. King and Andrew Young went to see President Johnson in this country. And they asked for a legislation immediately after they had passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And the president said, look, I have passed a major legislation. I just don't have any more capital, more energy to do this thing. And Andrew Young says, Dr. King sat there and said, yes, Mr. President, yes, Mr. President. As they came out of the White House, he turned to Andrew Young and said, the president is right, he has no more power. You and I do. Let's go back to Alabama. It was going back to Alabama that brought about the change. So in that regard, I want you to comment on the vitality of this movement, because ultimately it's not just the institutions, it's institutions combined with the strength of the society, intellectual strength and moral strength and social strength. What do you see the next phase for the lawyers' movement? Is it going to continue to exert, or do you think it has been contained by institutional means?
I think you have cited an excellent example. I believe that we have something similar in offering in Pakistan. Of course, you must be knowing that through this constitutional amendment, the proposed 18th amendment to the Constitution of Pakistan, they want to further curtail and enslave the superior judiciary of Pakistan. They want to undo with the Supreme Judicial Council. They want to put in their own nominated retired judges in that council, and even that council is not going to be accorded any finality. Their decisions would be challengeable before a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court. Apart from that, insofar as the nomination process of the judges itself is concerned, that would be controlled by the law minister, both at the High Court level and the Supreme Court level. And in fact, if these amendments are put into practice, if these amendments are made law, the judiciary in Pakistan would be the most enslaved, most curtailed judiciary in the entire civilized world. Now, this is something which was easiest insofar as it's being put into effect is concerned. Q League would be for it. People's Party is for it. People's Party and PMLN are constituting a very strong coalition, a coalition which virtually can talk of 2/3 majority, the required majority to amend the Constitution. Everything is there. But the package is lying there. The package is lying in cold storage for one reason only. The Pakistan people have spoken. The Pakistan people have come alive, and the people of Pakistan would not tolerate one bit of it.
But as we look at, for instance, the history of civil rights movement in this country, we see that movements not only change laws, they change institutions. We had in 1896 in this country the law of Plessy versus Ferguson, in which the Supreme Court of the United States said that separate is equal and therefore constitutional. After roughly 60 years in 1954 in Brown versus Board of Education, the same institution, not the same set of men, but the same institution said separate is not equal, therefore unconstitutional. What had changed was the society, the morals, the philosophy, and the movements that were articulating it. It seems to me if Zardari and company don't restore the judges, in the end it might be more beneficial for Pakistan, because it will become a deeper movement, a stronger movement of lawyers that will be more, because you have double advantage of being inside and outside simultaneously of that movement. And this is a question I want you really sort of give us a frank answer. Do you see among the ranks of lawyers people with the caliber to understand that historical necessity?
Yes, we have an excellent leadership which is endowed to us, and they are doing a very fine job. And I can assure you that all these people are well abreast of similar constitutional developments elsewhere in the world and at other times in world history. And I'm sure that they have been taking their lessons from there. And to be sure, whatever they have done so far is by and large not only commendable, but more or less consistent insofar as regular successes are concerned.
No, I'm not for a second calling into question their intellectual competence, but the strength of character and willingness to endure hardship, difficulties, and even sort of, exclusion from the corridors of power. You know what I'm hinting at.
Yes, I think that again is a very important aspect of the matter. Insofar as physical hardships are concerned, you are aware that on the 3rd of November, many things happened simultaneously. On the one hand, over 60 Superior Court judges were sent home. They were incarcerated. On the other hand, the media was totally blacked out. The Pakistan media was totally blacked out. And other than that, the leaders of the lawyers movement also were arrested and kept interned indefinitely. Now you see, I must tell you something here. Only recently I came to know that there was a discussion in the US with regard to what Pervez Musharraf did to Pakistan on November 3, 2007, and as an analogy, it was mentioned during that talk as to what would be the reaction of the American people, what would be the reaction of the American intellectuals if the US president was to do the same thing to the superior judiciary in the United States, was to do the same thing to the media in the United States, was to do the same thing to the leaders of the lawyers movement in the United States, and the whole gathering was just taken in, and there was no answer.
So you are quite confident about both the caliber, the character, as well as the competence of the...
I have no doubt, because in the ultimate analysis, it is your place in history which counts. These small positions here or there have really no significance.
Right. And what I want to ask you is, now there is an obvious step that I think is about to happen. PMLN must make a decision vis-a-vis its own, the collaboration with the People's Party. Which way do you think the cat is going to jump?
Insofar as Mian Nawaz Sharif is concerned, I think he is very clear in his own mind as to what is to be done in the prevailing circumstances. But his attitudes, his programs, his plans apparently are getting watered down by those who are around him and who are in a position to advise him. I will only say that those people should allow Mian Nawaz Sharif to act more independently and follow his own better sense, his own better judgment.
I have heard nothing but optimistic notes from our Justice Wajihuddin Ahmed Saab, who is one of the patron saints of the lawyers movement in Pakistan, a participant observer to a moment of history. This might be the moment of truth for Pakistan, where new Pakistan is being born. As we know, Chinese thought that the best man to rule a society is a saint. Greeks thought it was a philosopher. Perhaps Pakistanis have decided it must be an intellectual and a judge. Let that be Pakistan's wish that may come true. We thank you for that, and this conversation will continue in other settings. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.